Not so long ago, mere mention of the deliberate murder of white South Africans, country folk and commercial farmers in particular, was deemed racist. Even the Western media collectively brayed when candidate Trump retweeted a related white genocide hashtag. It's still racist to suggest that the butchering of these whites almost daily, in ways that beggar belief, is racially motivated. Positively scandalous is it to describe the ultimate goal of a killing spree now in its third decade thus: that there is an ethnic cleansing of white farming South Africans from the land and community they have cultivated since the 1600s. Be thankful, though, for small mercies. At least the international media monopoly is finally reporting facts, such as that just the other day, when Andre and Lydia Simon, aged 70, were hacked to death in Port Elizabeth. This black-on-white murder spree has been ongoing since a dominant party political dispensation was negotiated in South Africa in the early 1990s. But while the criminal evidence is at last out in the open, the motive for these hate crimes is only mumbled about for fear of offending the murderers. For in South Africa, we find a criminal class, born into freedom after 1994, that burns with white-hot hatred for Afrikaner South Africans. But why? The South African state's stout indifference to the plight of whites does not exist in a void. Witness the steady anti-white venom the dominant party Cobra head, the ANC, spits out. The de facto situation is that whites are under criminal siege explicitly because of their race. The black criminal collective consciousness understands that whites are now historical fair game. The physical existential vulnerability of European South Africans flows from a confluence of historical antecedents that have placed them in a uniquely precarious position. The white minority surrendered political dominance in return for non-racial constitutional safeguards. By forswearing control over the state apparatus, whites ceded mastery over their destiny, vesting their existential survival in a political dispensation, in other words, a liberal democracy. In a needlessly optimistic assumption, whites imagined blacks too would be bound by the same political abstractions, and would relinquish race in favor of a constitutional design as an organizing principle in the society they now controlled. Having surrendered without defeat for a tepid peace, Europeans are, moreover, particularly and uniquely vulnerable within this political dispensation because of their history on the continent. Remedial historical revisionism notwithstanding, South Africa, with its space program and skyscrapers, was not the product of the people currently dismantling it. Rather, it was the creation of British and Dutch settlers and their descendants. For what they've achieved and acquired, and for the original sins of apartheid in South Africa or slavery in America, whites are the objects of envy and racial enmity. The observations of liberal African-American journalist Keith Richburg are particularly pertinent here, for he believes that on the Dark Continent, tribal allegiance trumps political persuasion and envy carries the day. He cites the fate of the Tutsi, an alien Nilotic African people who formed a minority in Rwanda and Burundi, among the Hutu, who were a Bantu-speaking people. The Hutu always resented the tall, imposing, attractive Tutsis who had dominated them on and off since the 15th century. When the Hutus finally picked up machetes to slash to bits nearly 1 million of their Tutsi neighbors in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, contends Richburg, slashing at their own perceived ugliness as if destroying this thing of beauty, this thing that they could never really attain, they removed it from the earth forever. Is this impulse alive in the savagery inflicted on the European settlers of South Africa? Who can say for sure? This much we know. Empowering political majorities in Africa has helped, not hindered, the propensity of hostile masses to exact revenge on helpless minorities. By comparison, it would be a very grave mistake to believe that non-white groups flowing into the West will also relinquish their racial and tribal unifying principles in favor of those which have governed our civilization for 2 millennia. And this, if anything, should be the primary takeaway from our presentation.